a different kind of question. Could you talk a little bit about central bank digital currency? We know that China has one and they don't have privacy. We also know that stablecoins in the United States are now becoming quickly one of the largest holders of US Treasuries, and that's very beneficial for our country in terms of being able to have a global dollar as a reserve currency. Could you talk a little bit about the Treasury and both of those issues? And whether you see them coincide, they can live side by side. Thank you.
Okay. So, I mean, in terms of central bank digital currency, that's something that many countries, including the United States, are exploring. What we want is a fast, safe payment system. There are innovations that are taking place that are not a central bank digital currency, but nevertheless very significant payments innovations, like the Fed's introduction of FedNow that will lead to 24/7 real-time settlement, which is an important innovation. And so there's a lot going on beyond central bank digital currency, but it is something that we're examining and there is a lot of interest in worldwide. You asked about stablecoins. I am concerned about stablecoins. They could play a positive role in our financial system, although at this point, stablecoins are mainly used to engage in trading on crypto platforms. But a stablecoin is very similar to a bank deposit in that it promises that you can have a dollar for the equivalent stablecoin with certainty anytime that you want. And in order to make good on such a pledge, it needs to be backed by absolutely safe assets. I don't think all stable coins at this point do have that kind of backing. We've proposed regulations and have been working with Congress to try to put in effect a regulatory framework that, among other things, would require that any stablecoin issuer hold absolutely safe liquid assets 100% to back stablecoins. So they could be a significant demander of treasuries. I think with the proper regulatory environment, I think there is bipartisan legislation that's been considered in House Financial Services Committee that I think comes close to what we would want to see. They could play a positive role in our financial system, but without adequate regulation, they can suffer from runs akin to a bank run that can create a panic. And we've seen that with a number of stable coins that have failed and sort of broken the buck, so to speak. And fortunately, the connections between stable coins and our banking system are, there are some, and some have been problematic, but they're not very extensive at this point. So the problems haven't really spilled over to the broader banking system, but without proper regulation, they could one day.
Andreessen Horowitz released its annual State of Crypto report this week, and the firm put the number of worldwide cryptocurrency owners at 617 million, a new high, driven in part by the mass adoption of stablecoin. Join us now with more on crypto. Anthony Pompliano, founder, CEO of Professional Capital Management. It's election season. We've been watching Bitcoin. Druckenmiller said that perhaps the recent move is an indication that some players think that that Trump may have moved ahead. He's moved ahead on a lot of the betting sites. Do you think that's why? I mean, it's back to 67, which is not anywhere near the high, but it is well above where it was 3 weeks ago. It was threatening to go under 59,000 again. So it's been moving up for the past week or so.
I think the market conditions are definitely playing in favor of store value assets. You see gold up 30% this year. Bitcoin's up 60%. So Bitcoin is just more sensitive and kind of more volatile than gold.
You know, I asked you a specific question about whether it was moving up on Trump's prospect. Did you? I think this is like last night. Did you hear what the actual question was? Do you think it's related? Because Andrew points out that Vice President Harris has been sort of courting some of the crypto world. So then
I don't think it matters who the president's going to be, right? Bitcoin.
So even the last week has nothing to do with it.
I think that it is much more likely that about 6 months after the halving, you get the pricing in of the supply shock. You also have central banks around the world that are cutting interest rates. You have M2 money supply that's now expanding. And then you also have a very bullish investor base, right? If you go and you look at kind of how over-levered people are and how excited they are about stocks moving up, Bitcoin moving up, et cetera. Now, if you go back and look at 2020, this is right about the time where we went from, call it $10,000 for 6 months. We just went straight up from $10,000 to $64,000 in March of 2021. And so I'm not a huge believer in just like, hey, it's the month of October, everything's got to go up, because usually September is down, but it was a up month. And so we kind of invalidated that thought process. But I do believe that there is something about around 6 months after the halving, you start to work in that supply change, you get a monetary regime change. And I do think Bitcoin is going to continue to run through the end of the year.
Welcome to the Crypto Teacher. And you know I come back with that video just to make you think.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.
And make sure you're joining the Patrons. If you're not a part of the Patrons, make sure you're hitting the Cash App. And also, guys, make sure you go like and follow the TikTok. More videos to come. And we have Janet Yellen on CBDCs and stablecoins. And she states that countries are exploring CBDCs. But we know countries already have them ready, tested, and ready to go. It doesn't matter what country you go to, they all have a plan for this fourth industrial revolution. And she talks about FedNow. And don't forget, guys, FedNow is interoperable. And she stated that stablecoins are risks, but can play a key role. And we know that is correct. And we also know plenty of governments have used stablecoins, including America. And they used stablecoins to try to bypass Maduro. And that was years ago. But it lets us know this technology is ready to go. And stablecoin issuers are buying up treasuries. And that will keep the central banks in control. And she also talked about regulation. And we know regulation is definitely around the corner. Because we have just about every country has put in regulation except for the United States. And we're behind on purpose because they want the emerging markets to rise. And she talked about the risk of stablecoins causing a bank run. But guys, we know who's responsible for all bank runs? That's right, the central banks. And remember, the Crypto Teacher told you. And we had Andreessen, my God, coming out with a crypto adoption report. And of course, is led by stablecoins. And we have Pomp on CNBC asked about the Bitcoin run, but guys, we had the Fed lower rates. We know at the beginning of the month we move up. We had the China stimulus, and then also we're getting close to the election. And we normally get a year-end rally unless we have some type of geopolitical event. And they talk about banking the unbanked, and due to cell phones, you have a bank in your hand. But the emerging markets are turned to stablecoins due to the inflation and fiat dying. And then also you have less fees. So it's just a lot cheaper, a lot quicker for them to use stablecoins. And of course, who's pushing that? That's right, the central banks. And who is Satoshi? The HBO documentary. And that's just to push adoption. Because we know, again, the central banks were behind Bitcoin. It was the perfect plan. In 2008, we have the banking crash, the horrible politicians, and what do you bring in? Bitcoin as the savior to get rid of the banks and take the politicians out the picture. But what do we see now? The banks and politicians controlling the path of Bitcoin and crypto. You can't make this stuff up. Remember, guys, your life is an illusion and TV is your reality. And again, they remind us that we're in America to Babylon. Betting on the election. America is going to become a big casino. And remember, the Crypto Teacher told you. Because he knows. When it comes to the NWO, it's all planned out. You have a wonderful day.
The same selling points for why Bitcoin.
Bitcoin is the simplest story in finance, but it is the hardest story for traditional financial market players to understand because it requires them to not overthink it. And I think that's a really, kind of important point, which is Bitcoin is a finite asset. If they increase the money supply, if they drop interest rates, and people around the world realize that they need a store of value, they're going to buy Bitcoin. Now, what's really interesting is Charlie Bolillo from Creative Planning put out this chart that over the last 30 years, the U.S. dollar has lost 50% of its purchasing power. In one generation, people lost 50% of their purchasing power. They're going to look for other assets. Now, what I do think is important is that Bitcoin is not a threat to the U.S. dollar. What we're seeing and what the Andreessen report pointed out is that actually what people are doing is they're using Bitcoin as a savings account. They're buying Bitcoin and they're holding it. They don't want to spend the Bitcoin, but they're starting to use these stable coins. And so stable coins now have hundreds of millions of users. And so just like in the traditional world where you have a savings account and you have a checking account, you never touch your savings account. That's what people are doing with their Bitcoin. It's the digital savings account, and then the stable coins are now your checking account to pay for your everyday expenses, goods and services, et cetera. And I think that by reducing the friction of switching between currencies, because now everything is digital, what you're now introducing is a multi-currency world, which historically hasn't been possible because to move from dollars to any other currency was incredibly expensive and difficult. Now we have a savings account in Bitcoin. Stablecoins are what you're going to pay for, and those two things are going to continue to ride, and stablecoins will be a huge bull market for the U.S. dollar.
Okay, so the great masses of the unbanked, are you seeing Bitcoin become, I mean, if you have a phone, you can have a bank anywhere in the world. Is that, in the past, you've said, that's like fairy dust. Remember, you sprinkle a little fairy dust. You've been in foreign countries and you ask the guys, you got it, and they're like, what are you talking about? I have no idea what you're talking about. Do you think, can you make the case that's actually happening
I'll give you a couple
or is it just fairy dust?
Let me give you a couple of numbers. So there's two reports that recently came out. One, Nick Carter at Castle Island, they did a huge study with Brevin Howard, Visa, et cetera. And then there's a new guy who's the head of economics at Tether. They both put out a bunch of data. And so the data points were Tether claims that they have 330 million people on chain, not in centralized exchanges, on chain with Tether in those wallets. If you add in centralized exchanges, tens of millions more. So let's call it 400 plus million people just with Tether. Then Nick Carter, Visa, Brevin Howard went and they looked and they said 2 out of every 3 emerging market crypto users have converted stablecoins and their fiat currencies. So they're going back and forth between these assets. And then they also said that 40% of these emerging market crypto users have bought a good or service with stablecoins. Now, again, that is just crypto market emerging market users. So what is the percentage? That's a huge question. So if it's only 10% of a nation, you go and you talk to people on the ground, only 1 out of 10 people are going to say, hey, I've got the stablecoin. But it is a very high penetration of usage for these stablecoins for the people who have them.
I mean, because you can paint this unbelievable picture, Andrew, that there's people in high inflation countries that work their ass off. And then, a week later, whatever they worked for is worth, 10% less in a week. And if you were to go into Bitcoin, there's a place where but I don't know if it's really happening.
I think there's a huge story right now. We'll see if it happens. Stripe is reportedly looking at acquiring one of these stablecoin businesses. And so when you start to look at a digital payment provider saying, hey, look, let's go and adopt these stablecoins. Again, stablecoins are for payments. Bitcoin is for savings, which historically Bitcoiners have said, you're going to spend your Bitcoin. But right now it is dumb to spend your Bitcoin in America. You get taxed, and it's a huge issue.
All right, thank you. Would you say you've been getting at it relentlessly all day already?
Every morning,
since the minute
with a smile.
You've been getting at it. We got to do that. Do you? There's days I'm not relentless. I don't feel relentless at all. Yeah, I think he does.
You guys are doing just fine.
You sure?
I'm positive.
More coffee or something or below. I don't know. No, I'm kidding. Anyway.
When we come back.
Oh, I forgot. I have a very important
success.
question. One question that's super important. Do you think that Peter Todd is Satoshi Nakamoto? No, did everybody watch the HBO documentary last week?
I didn't watch it, but I saw the guy. I hope not.
Do you think that's him?
Andrew, we're all Satoshi.
I want to ask you about 2 other trends that are taking place among retail investors and whether it's their markets you want to play in. One is, we keep talking about the election, as you might imagine. There are folks who now want to bet on the election. You can technically actually do it right now. Even in the U.S. Before you couldn't do it. Do you think that's a good development, a bad development? How do you think about the betting markets for political purposes?
Look, I think I'm very pro-markets, pro-free market, and I think that there's legitimate geopolitical risk to hedge, and investors should have access to all the tools at their disposal to hedge their risk appropriately. So yeah, very much in favor of more access to markets and more clear information. I think that the great thing about these markets is people have money on the line as well. So you can kind of trust that they care much more about the result, and those results should be much more reliable in a sense than just simple polling.
So I don't know if you saw, but Stan Druckenmiller yesterday made a comment about another trade that he thinks may be indicative of where this presidential campaign could go, which is the crypto trade, the trade around Bitcoin. I'm curious about how you see crypto moving. Obviously, Bitcoin has moved higher, and whether you think that's a sign of former President Trump gaining a lead in this election, because there's a view that he may be more pro-crypto. At the same time, I think there's a sense that Vice President Harris may be more open to crypto than she used to be. I don't know if you see a massive distinction between the two.
Both candidates seem like they're in favor of the U.S. being a leader in the space, which I think is a welcome departure from the status quo. So it could have an effect. You know, the markets could be reacting to the political sphere, but also we're seeing broad-based optimism right now across multiple asset classes. I don't think it's just crypto. And you know, markets shift up and down. The scenario can change very, very quickly. But right now, when we talk to our traders, many of whom are at this event, they're expressing a lot of optimism. You know, they believe the future is going to be better than the past. America is kind of at the intersection of all of these new trends and innovation. If you're looking at electric vehicles, artificial intelligence, there's a lot of potential there. And they right. see America and the U.S. stock market as the best way to kind of capitalize on that.
Going to a different economy, and we're going to be learning more about that as we go. But clearly, we're learning that things can be done from remote locations. We're learning that technology can replace people even more than we thought.
We're not going back to the same economy. We're recovering, but to a different economy, and it'll be one that is more leveraged to technology. And I worry that that is going to make it even more difficult than it was for many workers.
In Silicon Valley, and my friends who work in technology know that what we did to the manufacturing workers, we are now going to do to the retail workers, the call center workers, the fast food workers, the truck drivers, and then even bookkeepers, accountants, insurance agents, lawyers, and on through the economy. So what happened to the manufacturing workers is a very clear sign.
And so we'll import Chinese-based CBDC technology. So it's going to be CBDC in a box provided to you by the People's Bank of China.
But every stock, every bond, every currency, every commodity, every piece of art, every private business, every piece of real estate will eventually be a token on a blockchain, an entry on a ledger, permanent and immutable. We will have truth instead of trust, and we will save over $7 trillion a year. 6 to 8% of global GDP is wasted by the friction of the trust industry that's necessary when you have dual entry accounting. With triple entry accounting, which is what a blockchain is, we get rid of all of that friction. It's a beautiful future.
Like what you see in China and their social credit scoring systems, right? If we get identity wrong, you know, it could be a tool to enslave humanity. And if we get it right, it could be a tool to liberate humanity. And as an American, you know, I'm obviously rooting for the one that's on the side of freedom.
Bitcoin is an international asset. And also, I do believe the role of crypto is, it's digitizing gold.
I actually believe this technology is going to be very important. Look at it. We have been part of a huge revolution in investing through ETFs. We believe that ETFs will be changing the whole way we invest. Many people still use it as a means, well, people are investing it for indexing. No, the majority of people who are putting money in in ETFs are active investors that are buying exposure. The entire bond market is being transformed as we talk right now. I believe the next generation for markets, the next generation for securities will be tokenization of securities. We will, and if we can have that distributed ledger that we know every beneficial owner, every beneficial seller, we all have our code of who's buying, who's selling, instantaneous settlement. And think about it, it changes the whole ecosystem.
Chinese bank ICBC has been hit by a ransomware attack, and the U.S. Treasury market, as a result of that, has been disrupted. This, according to the Financial Times. We're getting it more right now with Bloomberg's Shonali Bassick. Shonali, what do we know?
Listen, we have the Financial Times now reporting that ICBC, one of China's largest banks here, was hit with a ransomware attack. And remember, they're a very significant intermediary in the Treasury market. The SIFMA has told its members that this has been part of the reason here that the system is kind of clogged up, if you will, during that auction that we saw a little bit before. The attack had prevented ICBC, according to the Financial Times, from settling Treasury trades on behalf of other market participants. A large executive at a major bank also telling the paper that such a large party on the fixed income clearing corp creates major concerns, potentially impacting the liquidity of Treasury markets. Now,
it was not just a poor auction. It was absolutely lousy, and you know, when the dealers have to step in to save a treasury auction, that's a rare occurrence. And
Cryptoteacher and the New World Order book, plus the 3 Kids books. It's time to re-educate. Also, new to cryptos, Coinbase, Bitrue, Binance. Do not forget book links and crypto links are in the description. The stock channel, guys. Don't forget to go like, subscribe, spread everywhere. You have your Kobo, your chip stocks, your banking, your gaming. While everybody's sitting at home, get home stocks, the Seaver, the biotech stocks. And while everybody's at home wishing, they were still getting that free money. What are they doing? Drinking and smoking weed. Don't forget about those stocks, and you have a wonderful day. The most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the vision, values, and agenda of an entire generation to come. Steve Jobs. And guys, you know I truly believe in this. When you look at the New World Order, they're the storytellers. And that's the reason why I wrote my New World Order book. But guys, now it's time to change the current generation. And I wrote 3 kids books. You know, I love the Trinity because I understand the power that's in it. So I have 3 books. We have an opportunity to change the generation, to educate, not just me, but I want to show you that I take action on a daily basis. And I want you to take action on a daily basis. Whether it's your job, whether it's in your community, we have an opportunity right now to educate the masses. I posted this on my Twitter account. Please share, but this is a short clip of the 3 books. There's going to be a clothing line and action figures. Please get these books for your kids, nephews, cousins, friends, so therefore we can start the re-education now. Because as we see, the 4th Industrial Revolution foundation is definitely here. Robots, algorithms, drones, taking humanity out the picture. We have to re-educate. But let's get into the video.
Part 1. King Joshua and Grandma Tam save the village. Part 2. King Joshua and Grandma Tam save New York from COVID Stories 3. Part 3. King Joshua and Grandma Tam goes to China.
It's mandatory to get part 1, part 2, and part 3 of this series. It's time to re-educate Generation Z.